For more than 50 years, Dan Inosanto has been one of the few men who truly understood Bruce Lee beyond the legend. He was not just a student. He was not just a training partner. He was there in the private moments, inside the small training spaces, during the quiet experiments that shaped the future of martial arts. He saw Bruce when the cameras were off. He saw the doubts, the questions, the constant search for improvement. For decades after Bruce Lee's sudden death in 1973, Inosanto rarely spoke publicly about those private experiences. While books were written and debates exploded across magazines and later the internet, he remained mostly silent. That silence was not weakness. It was loyalty. He believed Bruce's life was not meant to become entertainment. But as the years passed, the legend of Bruce Lee grew larger than the man himself, and eventually Inosanto felt that silence was no longer protecting the truth. It was allowing the truth to disappear. Over time, Bruce Lee became more than a martial artist in the public imagination. He became a symbol of perfection. Many fans began to describe him as unbeatable, flawless, and almost superhuman. Online discussions turned into heated arguments. Some people claimed he could defeat any fighter from any era. Others treated even small criticisms as disrespect. The more time passed, the stronger the myth became. But myths are often simpler than real people. Inosanto knew the real Bruce was more complex. He knew Bruce was brilliant, but he was also human. He made mistakes. He tested ideas that failed. He changed his mind often. He never claimed to have mastered everything. In fact, Bruce believed strongly in constant growth. He disliked rigid systems. He disliked being trapped by labels. Watching the legend grow into something frozen and untouchable troubled Inosanto deeply. The moment that finally pushed Inosanto to speak more openly came after the release of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, directed by Quentin Tarantino. In the film, Bruce Lee is shown as loud, arrogant, and overly confident. In one scene, he claims he could defeat heavyweight boxing champion Muhammad Ali. He then gets into a fight with a stuntman character played by Brad Pitt and is thrown into a car. For many viewers, the scene was just fiction. But for those who knew Bruce personally, it felt uncomfortable. Inosanto publicly stated that Bruce admired Muhammad Ali and studied his boxing style carefully. He said Bruce would never speak disrespectfully about Ali. Confidence was part of Bruce's personality, but arrogance was not. Inosanto felt that the film's version of Bruce did not match the man he trained with daily. Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee, also criticized the portrayal. She explained that her father was not an arrogant person and that the family had not been consulted about the scene. Inosanto supported her concerns. For him, this was not about protecting Bruce's ego. It was about protecting accuracy. He had stayed quiet for decades because he believed Bruce's personal life should remain private. But now he began to feel that silence was allowing others to rewrite history. If people who truly knew Bruce did not speak, then fictional versions might become accepted as fact. As Inosanto spoke more openly in interviews, some fans were surprised by the details he shared. One important topic was Bruce Lee's background in Wing Chun. Many people believed Bruce had completed the entire system and reached the highest level. Inosanto explained calmly that Bruce did not finish the full Wing Chun curriculum. This was not criticism. It was simply historical truth. Bruce left Hong Kong at a young age and continued developing his skills in different directions. His greatness did not come from collecting titles or ranks. It came from understanding principles deeply and then adapting them. Inosanto often said that Bruce cared more about what worked in real situations than about formal certification. This honesty upset some fans. They felt that revealing such details made Bruce seem less powerful. But Inosanto argued the opposite. He believed Bruce's real strength came from his willingness to evolve. Bruce studied boxing carefully. He admired the timing and rhythm of fighters in the ring. He analyzed fencing for its footwork and distance control. He looked at wrestling for its balance and grappling ideas. Long before modern mixed martial arts became popular, Bruce was already blending different systems. He and Inosanto trained with protective equipment so they could practice with real contact instead of only controlled movements. This approach was ahead of its time. It showed that Bruce valued realism over tradition. Inosanto also described Bruce as extremely analytical. During sparring sessions, Bruce would sometimes put himself in difficult positions on purpose. He would train in tight spaces or start at a disadvantage to test his reactions. He believed that if a technique only worked in perfect conditions, it was not reliable. He constantly asked questions. He changed his training methods often. This was not the behavior of someone who believed he was invincible. It was the behavior of someone who believed learning never ends. When Bruce Lee died suddenly in Hong Kong at just 32 years old, the shock was intense. For Inosanto, it was deeply personal. He served as a pallbearer at Bruce's funeral. He later admitted that he still thinks about Bruce every single day. Not in a dramatic way, but in quiet reflection. After Bruce's death, Inosanto left his teaching career and dedicated himself fully to martial arts instruction. He felt responsible for continuing the work Bruce had started. But he always emphasized that Jeet Kune Do was not meant to become a rigid system. It was meant to remain flexible and alive. This idea caused division within the martial arts community. Some people believe Jeet Kune Do should be preserved exactly as Bruce taught it in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Others followed Inosanto's belief that it must continue evolving. Critics accuse him of changing Bruce's legacy. Supporters argued that evolution was exactly what Bruce wanted. The debate became emotional. For some fans, Bruce Lee represented perfection. Admitting that he was still learning felt uncomfortable. It challenged the image of an untouchable hero, but Inosanto never claimed Bruce was ordinary. He always described him as exceptional. He simply insisted that Bruce's greatness came from his humanity, from his constant questioning, from his refusal to stop growing. According to Inosanto, freezing Bruce into a myth would betray everything he stood for. Bruce did not want followers who copied him blindly. He wanted thinkers who explored their own path. Today, the discussion continues. Some fans remain angry. Others appreciate the honesty. But one thing is clear. Dan Inosanto did not speak to create controversy. He spoke because he felt time was running short and history should be told by those who were there. His message is not about lowering Bruce Lee's legacy. It is about understanding it correctly. Bruce Lee was not a finished statue. He was a moving process. And perhaps that ongoing evolution is the most powerful part of his story. As the years moved forward, the tension inside the martial arts community did not disappear. Instead, it slowly grew stronger. The debate was no longer just about a movie scene or a single interview. It became a deeper argument about identity. For many people, Bruce Lee represented something personal. He was not just an athlete or an actor. He was a symbol of discipline, strength, cultural pride, and breaking barriers. He changed how Asian men were seen in Western cinema. Through shows like The Green Hornet and films such as Enter the Dragon, he became a global figure. For immigrants and minorities, he was proof that someone who looked different could stand at the center of the screen and command respect. Because of that emotional connection, any discussion that made him seem less than perfect felt threatening to some admirers. It was not just about martial arts skill. It was about identity, pride, and inspiration. Dan Inosanto understood this emotional connection better than most. He knew how much Bruce meant to people around the world. He had seen letters arrive from countries Bruce had never even visited. He had watched students speak Bruce's name with deep respect. That is why his decision to speak openly was not careless. It was thoughtful. He knew there would be backlash. But he also believed that protecting a legend by hiding facts was not true respect. According to Inosanto, Bruce himself disliked blind loyalty. Bruce often warned students not to turn him into an idol. He believed that idol worship stopped growth. If people only copied him without understanding why he did what he did, then they would miss the entire point of his philosophy. One of the most misunderstood parts of Bruce Lee's life was his relationship with tradition. Many assumed he rejected traditional martial arts completely. In reality, he respected tradition but refused to be limited by it. He trained seriously in Wing Chun under Ip Man in Hong Kong. He studied different fighting systems after moving to the United States. But he was never satisfied with simply repeating old forms. He believed real fighting was unpredictable. It did not follow scripts. Because of this belief, he developed Jeet Kune Do as a concept rather than a fixed style. The name itself meant the way of the intercepting fist. It described a strategy, not a rulebook. Inosanto has often explained that Bruce wanted students to absorb what was useful and discard what was not. That message becomes difficult to accept if people want clear, fixed answers. The disagreement between originalists and conceptualists became one of the biggest divides in the Jeet Kune Do community. Originalists argue that only what Bruce personally taught during his lifetime should be considered true Jeet Kune Do. They focus on preserving techniques exactly as they were shown in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Conceptualists, many of whom follow Inosanto's teaching, believe that Jeet Kune Do must continue to evolve. They argue that Bruce himself would have continued adapting if he had lived longer. This debate is not simple. Both sides claim to protect Bruce's legacy. But the emotional intensity of the discussion shows how powerful his influence remains. Another important point Inosanto has raised over the years involves Bruce Lee's physical limits. Bruce was extremely fast, strong, and dedicated. But he was also human. He experienced injuries. He dealt with back problems that caused serious pain. He pushed his body very hard, sometimes beyond healthy limits. Inosanto has mentioned that Bruce trained with incredible intensity, often demanding more from himself than others thought possible. That dedication built his legend, but it also came with risk. Talking about these struggles does not weaken Bruce's image. Instead, it shows how much work and sacrifice stood behind his achievements. The public often remembers Bruce Lee as a calm philosopher or an unstoppable fighter on screen. But Inosanto describes him as both passionate and restless. Bruce read constantly. He filled notebooks with ideas about movement, psychology, and self-expression. He was not satisfied with simple answers. Even when a technique worked, he would ask whether it could work better. This constant questioning sometimes made him appear impatient, but it also made him innovative. Inosanto believes that this restless search is what truly separated Bruce from others. It was not just physical talent. It was mental intensity. When discussing the anger from some fans, it is important to understand the power of nostalgia. Many people discovered Bruce Lee as children or teenagers. His movies left a strong emotional mark. The image of him standing confidently, delivering powerful strikes, became part of their imagination. Over time, that memory became fixed. When new information challenges a fixed memory, discomfort naturally follows. Inosanto's interviews did not attack Bruce. They simply added complexity. But complexity can feel uncomfortable when people prefer clear heroes and villains. Despite the criticism, Inosanto has never spoken with bitterness. His tone remains calm and respectful. He rarely responds directly to harsh online comments. Instead, he continues teaching. He travels internationally, sharing knowledge about Filipino martial arts, Jeet Kune Do concepts, and cross-training methods. His focus appears to be education rather than debate. In many interviews, he emphasizes that he is not trying to control Bruce's legacy. He is simply sharing his experience as someone who is present during important moments. Time has also softened some reactions. Younger generations of martial artists who train in mixed martial arts often see Bruce Lee as an early pioneer of cross-training. To them, the idea of combining boxing, wrestling, and striking arts is normal. In this modern context, Inosanto's explanation of Bruce's experimental mindset makes sense. What once sounded controversial now sounds logical. The martial arts world has changed dramatically since the 1970s. Training methods are more scientific. Protective gear and full-contact sparring are common. In many ways, the environment today reflects the direction Bruce was moving toward decades ago. In the end, the debate over Dan Inosanto speaking out reveals something important about heroes. When someone becomes larger than life, people often forget that real greatness includes flaws, doubts, and unfinished work. Bruce Lee's journey ended too soon. Because of that, people imagine what he might have become. But imagination is not history. Inosanto's decision to speak adds texture to that history. It reminds us that legends are built from real human effort, Whether fans agree with him or not, Dan Inosanto's voice carries weight because it comes from lived experience. He trained beside Bruce Lee. He learned directly from him. He mourned him as a friend. His words are not meant to destroy a myth, but to protect a truth. And perhaps the strongest tribute to Bruce Lee is not to pretend he was perfect, but to remember that he never wanted to stop evolving. AS conversations about Bruce Lee continue across interviews, documentaries, and online forums. One important question remains: what would Bruce himself think about all this debate? That question is impossible to answer fully, but those who knew him best, including Dan Inosanto, often return to Bruce's own words and philosophy for guidance. Bruce Lee repeatedly spoke about freedom from limitation. He encouraged students to be like water, meaning adaptable, flexible, and able to take the shape of any situation. This famous phrase was not poetry for its own sake. It described how he viewed martial arts, life, and even identity. Water does not argue about its form. It flows around obstacles or through them. If Bruce truly believed this, then freezing his legacy into a rigid, untouchable structure would go against his message. Inosanto has often pointed out that Bruce rejected the idea of being worshipped. He did not want statues. He wanted students who could think independently. That idea sits at the center of today's disagreement. Part of the tension also comes from how quickly Bruce Lee's image expanded after his death. When he passed away in 1973, his final major film, Enter the Dragon, had not yet fully shown its global impact. Soon after, Bruce became an international symbol. His posters hung in gyms, bedrooms, and training halls across the world. Young fighters memorized his movements. Filmmakers studied his screen presence. Over time, the cinematic version of Bruce blended with the real man. Audiences remembered the powerful fighter defeating multiple opponents with dramatic speed. But movies are carefully designed performances. Inosanto has explained that Bruce understood performance deeply. He trained hard, but he also knew how to create powerful images for the screen. Separating the actor from the martial artist can be difficult, especially for fans who first discovered him through film. Another important issue is how history is preserved. When someone dies young, their story often stops in a state of possibility. Bruce Lee was only 32 years old. He was still refining Jeet Kune Do. He was still experimenting with conditioning methods. He was still exploring film projects. Because his journey ended suddenly, there is no final chapter showing where his ideas might have led. This unfinished ending leaves space for imagination. Some people prefer to imagine that he had already reached the highest possible level. Others, like Inosanto, believe that Bruce would have continued changing and refining his approach for decades. This difference in belief shapes how people react to new information about his training or limitations. Inosanto's role in this story is complex. He is not simply a commentator. He is someone who built his own respected career in martial arts. Long before and after Bruce's death, he studied Filipino martial arts deeply and became a recognized teacher. His work stands on its own. Yet he is always linked to Bruce Lee because of their close relationship. Some critics argue that speaking about Bruce keeps that connection alive.